What's up guys, I'm back here again and today we'll be exploring branded Synchro's best and worst matchups. Starting off we have a live twin runic split. I chose not to include any other of the runic decks just because this is the most popular one I've seen. This deck has the ability to set up a layered amount of interruptions due to runic found in the monsters they have on field and even some side cards sometimes. This deck has some interruptions that can be quite tough to play through, but a glaring weakness in this, which will also determine how good this deck does into many decks, is lights and darks in graveyard, which this deck definitely has a decent amount of. And for that, and the engine being quite vulnerable if it loses Fountain, I'm going to put it as a decent matchup. Now the best deck of the game currently, Rescue Ace, is definitely showing that, as branded Synchro is not particularly great into it. Does not have to set up lights or darks in the graveyard if they don't go for the Terahertz line, and all their other combos are extremely strong, and you kind of hope they go for like set 4 summon preventer trying to play around Nib. So overall I'd say this is not the greatest matchup, but it's still decent. Well, I mean, like, not the greatest, but like you can potentially win maybe. And next up we have Dragon Link. This one's quite interesting, as you, as the branded Synchro player and the Dragon Link player, have very similar tools to each other, as the Bestial Engine and Seal. So I feel like this could go either way, especially with even skill levels. So I'm going to put this as an even matchup. The next deck we have here is Pearly, which doesn't have to place lights and darks in grave and has up big towers, and in trying to out it essentially means I'll gain infinite follow-up if you can't win that turn. Unfortunately, this deck can't win and out it, but it can out it with something like Sanctifier. But despite that, this deck is still strong with its follow-up, and board breaking potential going second sometimes can be quite scary as well. Unchained is the deck we have next, and was considered the best deck before 2 elements rose to power. This deck still has quite scary end boards though, with that DDD on the field. But with triple main deck Druisform, it becomes a lot easier to deal with that. So I feel like this is a pretty decent matchup, as the Bistials will be relatively live, and DD isn't the hardest thing to deal with as long as your Random Diffusion's not getting ashed. Deck now that we have here is Chimera. Bistials will be usable, but they won't be the greatest. Like, if this deck's 1-card combo resolves, you're probably not winning, especially with the amount of non-engine they'll have afterward, and Super Poly, which is like really good against you as well. But at the same time, if you disrupt their combo, or if you like go first and set up a board, the deck definitely will not have a great time with it. So I'd say this is a relatively even matchup as well. And now tier elements. A rising star of the new format has Arise Heart's gone, and it has the ability to just win the game out of just pure luck. But despite that, I main deck 7 Bistials, so I feel like this matchup is quite winnable. As there's that, the regular hand traps, and that the boards you still set up is definitely something that TLM will have a struggle breaking. Even the shufflers are not going to be as impactful as they could be, since like you're not as reliant as Branded Fusion. Getting your all-by shuffle back isn't as like much of a blowout as it could be. Moving on, we have Manadium, a deck that I really hate a lot just because of its like 1-card combo potential into OTKs and super boards, and that sometimes when I go first I get destroyed by multiples of board breakers and hand traps at the same time, and then die to a 1-card combo, which is unfortunate, but that's just how it happens sometimes. And sometimes this deck just does what I believe it does and just loses to getting its normal summon stopped. But with like Bistios being live against it sometimes, if they've done summon an early Baron, and Ashing Planet being nice, I'd still say this is a relatively decent matchup as well. Next up we have Flundereeze, a deck that's definitely going to go down in popularity since Unchained has a bad matchup in the tier, which will cause it to go down. And this is also another very good matchup for branded Synchro. Shifter isn't great against you. It allows you to just banish it with a Bistio and make this Pater, and I have this Pater negate. And like Empin isn't also a serious deal as you're a fusion deck and have many ways to out it. And going second, you can summon Guardian Chimera and like pop their field spell, trap, and even the little birds as well. Rika is a Glass Cannon combo deck that, if its combo resolves, will be quite difficult to deal with, and especially so that we don't have many hand traps to stop it in the main deck. So that, and not having a highlight or dark count, kind of puts it down in not likely by default. But there's definitely a hope to beat it, as I once have been able to do that with Imperm, top deck Imperm, and 5 engine pieces in hand. Leave like a comment down below if you want me to like show off that replay. That would be pretty cool. Next deck we have here is Vanquish Soul, a deck that definitely has a chance to see Ash far more than the other decks, as it has Borger draws plus Prosperity, which Ash isn't as good as it is against Branded Despia, but like it's still like tough to deal with since Branded Fusion is much less of an option. But this deck's engine is so weak that I feel like I have to put in a winning matchup as well. Branded Synchro just has a stronger grind game than it, even though it still has a relatively solid one. And TC Boo is just a nothing card into this deck as well. Next deck that we have here, second to last, is Labyrinth, a deck that I haven't actually played too much against, especially after their new card released, which I think is relatively good as well, but kind of feels a similar role at Kuklok. Well, this deck can be very scary with like the Unchained package, turning fiends that otherwise wouldn't be doing much into actual threats, and being able to like use Karma Cannon and loop it over and over to stall out to give you a bunch of advantage as well. But with the furniture giving you free darks in the graveyard, it can definitely be a lot easier to extend through their stuff as well. And last but not certainly, Infernoble Knight. It essentially combines all the traits that Branded Synchro does not want to play against, making it its worst matchup. Does not have many lights or darks in the graveyard to get rid of. It's a combo deck, which this Branded Synchro does not really want to play against, as it's far better doing with mid-range boards, especially how good its grind game is, and just being able to just push through hand traps in general because of like Gear Freed, which is just such a strong card as well. And the new Angel Ring card makes it even harder, like, especially with this deck's surprisingly low spell count. Post side, it's like 14, I think. He's like there's 12 in the main, and I like siding out a High Spirits and putting Dark Rulers. So, yeah, it can be quite difficult with that new brick as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That was the matchup tier list. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.